Well, good morning, everybody, and happy Friday. It is time to start our Friday Director Workshop. Um, Today's topic is a fun topic. We're going to have some fun today. I've decided that we need to have a little bit of fun with our topic today. So, we're going to talk about mistakes other people have made and how we can avoid them. We all make mistakes, every single one of us. We make mistakes on a daily basis. And I know for myself that, my 32 years of working in this career, I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for the mistakes that I've made in the past and the ability to reflect on those mistakes and learn from them. So I did a little survey with early learning leaders a while back and kind of asked people, what are some of the mistakes that people have made and how you can, mistakes that people have made and what you've learned from them. And I compiled this very, very long list that we're going to go over today. All right. I already see people are already asking some questions. We just got started, and so let me go ahead and go through my introduction. And I think that with my introduction, I'm going to answer a lot of your questions that are already popping up. So those of you that this is your first time joining our Facebook Live series, it's a very, very simple process. You just watch the video here on Facebook Live. At the end of today's session, I will post a link for an online worksheet. You will click on that link. You will answer about 10 questions for me. And then if you're needing a certificate of completion, you will pay at that time, and I will email your certificate to you. All right, so it's very, very simple. But again, the link for the online worksheet does not appear until at the end of today's Facebook Live. All right, and I will post that on the Facebook wall, and I will post it in the chat screen right here. All right, so good morning to everyone on here. We've got people from all over the place popping in, so fantastic, great seeing all of you. All right, now before we get to our topic, mistakes others have made and what you can do to avoid them, let's just go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room really, really fast because we have people here from all over the country, not just from Texas. But I know that a lot of people here in Texas are very, very anxious about the announcement that we got earlier this week from Governor Abbott with the end of the mask mandate and other executive orders. I just need everyone to be patient and wait until we receive further guidance from Health and Human Services, all right? So I don't have any answers or guidance for you at this time. We just got to wait and be patient. The only thing that I do want to remind all of you is that the emergency orders that we are under right now is from the Commissioner of Health and Human Services, not the governor, all right? So in order to change that emergency order from Health and Human Services, we would have to have directive from the commissioner, all right? Now, of course, the commissioner and the governor are going to go hand in hand, but we are still under the emergency orders from Health and Human Services. That has not changed, nor have we received any guidance on that as of 9 a.m. on Friday, March 5th, subject to change at any time. All right. Now, y'all know once we do receive some clarification and guidance, we will have a webinar. We will go over it. We will discuss it. But I know that we've been getting a lot of phone calls and emails in our office. Just breathe, everybody. Breathe and be patient. Once we receive that guidance, then we'll take it from there. The only thing else I have to say about this, and then we're going to move on, is that I know that we got vaccine rollouts happening. Teachers and childcare workers have been added to the 1C list, and so people are getting vaccines that work in childcare and public schools, starting this week. So that's fantastic news for those of you that are wanting to get it. Just remember, COVID is still out there, all right? This pandemic is not over. We are still in a very delicate state. We still need to be following health practices. We still need to be cautious, okay? So just because we have all of this exciting news that's starting to happen, don't let your guard down, okay? Continue operating like you've been doing for the past year, all right? So I've already heard comments from people about, oh, yay, we can start doing this and we don't have to do that. And I'm like, too soon, all right? Too soon, all right? Let's still keep the kids and our employees safe. All right, moving on. That's all of our COVID talk for today. Let's talk about all of these mistakes that y'all have made and I have made and we've all made right there. Yeah, Chris, it didn't magically go away, did it? No, that's hilarious right there. Yeah, just continue to be safe. All right, so I kind of thought we would have fun with this today because I don't know about y'all, but I need some fun. Right now. It's been kind of a crazy week for me, and so let's have some fun with this. Anytime I talk about a mistake that, really kind of hits you and kind of rings a bell with you, do your little heart or your star or your smiley face or whatever it is on Facebook so that we can kind of all see, oh yeah, I'm not the only one that's made that mistake. And then we'll kind of talk about, how we've learned from it right there. So, I kind of thought, let's just go back to Webster's dictionary and let's define what is a mistake. A mistake is a blunder in the choice of, to misunderstand the meaning or intention of, so not intentional right there, and sometimes our mistakes are not intentional. I'm probably going to say the majority of the mistakes that we make are not intentional, all right? But then we learn from it. It's like that old saying, what you don't know can't hurt you, and y'all know that's a big old pile of BS, all right? What you don't know can hurt you, and it can hurt you really, really bad, right? And a lot of us have made really bad mistakes just because we didn't know any better. Right? So to misunderstand the meaning or the intention of, I think that part is big right there. To make a wrong judgment of the character or the ability of, all right? And again, I think this is not intentional when we make the wrong judgment, but sometimes we form opinions without gathering all of the right information, all right? Or we make opinions too quickly with individuals or circumstances. So just what I was talking about, with the news this week, we got to be patient so that we can make good choices. And a lot of times we make mistakes because we rush into things, all right? And I know for me, that's been a big one because, I tend to be an instant gratification guy where, when I want something, I want it right now. When I want to do something, I want to do it right now. When I want to go somewhere, I want to go right now. And I've really had to learn to just slow down and be patient and wait, all right? A mistake is also to identify wrongly, to confuse with another, all right? We've definitely talked about, mistakes that we have made where we had information confused or we thought we were on one runway, but the plane was landing over here, all right? We talked about this last Friday in a workshop that we were doing where, what is one of the biggest mistakes that you've ever made? Or, oh, I remember what it was. What was one of the most embarrassing moments that you've ever had? And I'm like, mine was when I may have sent a text message to the wrong person. Ooh, have y'all ever done that? Sent the text message to the wrong person. That was embarrassing. Now, in my situation, I was actually talking about the person that I accidentally sent the text message to. Oops, all right. So to confuse with another, that was bad right there. And then, of course, a mistake sometimes is just to be wrong, all right? And sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes we're wrong. I also thought it would be important to start off this workshop today with talking about how to apologize, because when we do make a mistake, take ownership over it. Oops, I made a mistake, and let's take ownership and apologize and move on. All right, now this is one of your worksheet questions. Those of you that this is brand new to you and this is your first time joining us, I try to tell you when we come across a worksheet question, and so it's going to ask you what are the 3 ways to apologize. All right, number 1, come clean quickly. All right, as soon as you realize you've made a mistake, own up to it. All right, so come clean quickly. All right. Even a heartfelt apology, it loses its luster after a string of denials and you just putting it off right there. And if you look like you confessed only because you got caught, that doesn't make it look genuine either. All right, so try not to delay it. Try not to put it off. Try not to pass that blame. Don't blame others. All right, come clean quickly. All right. Number 2 is take ownership. All right. When you make a mistake, say, yeah, this was my mistake. Wasn't hers. Wasn't yours. It's my mistake. All right. A good apology is a clear admission of guilt. All right. Avoid those passive words, or those weasel words. I'm sorry if you, and then you're trying to put it back on their feelings, that type of way, that type of comment. You don't want to shift that blame onto others, all right? Especially if it's the person that you wronged, all right? So, hey, I made a mistake. This was 100% my mistake, all right? And then number 3 is make good, all right? If material was harmed, clean it up or pay for it. All right. If the damage was emotional, list the steps that you're going to take to ensure that it will never happen again. All right. So, for example, sometimes in a leadership role, we deal with situations in our programs where, we have policies, we have processes in place. Mistakes were made and we dropped the ball. Maybe it's a child injury, where we didn't contact a parent, and give them a heads up when we should have, or an accident report wasn't delivered to the parent, or, whatever it may be. We've got all these wonderful processes in place to ensure communication and to ensure safety. But, whether it's you or your employees, someone dropped the ball. And sometimes they drop many balls, all right? Well, when you're dealing with a situation like that, you've got to sit down with the parents and say, you know what? We have policies and processes in place, and they weren't followed. And we dropped the ball, all right? So here is a list of what I'm going to do to address this issue. All right, here's what I'm going to do to address the policies that were not followed, the processes that were not followed, and here's what I'm going to do to rebuild your trust. All right, because mom and dad, right now you probably don't trust us, and I don't blame you. But my goal is to win back your trust. All right. And I have found that, anytime you do that, and those are the words that you use right there, you probably have their trust back by the end of the meeting, all right? But you just got to own it sometimes. You just got to own it right there. I also want to talk, before we get into our mistakes that others have made, let's talk about maturity, all right? And maturity equals learning from our mistakes, all right? Now, we start this all the way in the infant toddler room, don't we? All right? That children learn from their mistakes. All right? We learn from cause and effect. All right? Pretty simple right there. And as we learn from cause and effect, we learn what works, what doesn't work, what gets our way, what doesn't get our way. All right? And that starts as early as the infant toddler room. And as we get older, we kind of master these skills, or we continue to practice these skills. As we mature, we become more self-confident, all right? And I've always said this, confidence is the secret to success, all right? And when you are confident in yourself and you're confident in your abilities, you're less likely to make a mistake. When you are also confident in yourself, okay, you're going to be quicker to own the mistake, all right? When you have a lack of confidence, that's when you try to push the blame on someone else. Or you try to find a reason for your mistake, all right, instead of owning it. As we mature, we also realize that mistakes are not usually fatal. All right. Y'all remember being a teenager, especially middle school and high school, and you do make a mistake and you think it's the end of the world, all right? I cannot go on with my life because I made this mistake and, I lost this, whatever friend or whatever, and it just feels like it's the end of the world. And as we mature, we start to realize that mistakes are not fatal. Now, in a leadership role, I just did a Friday workshop last month on handling significant events. And any of y'all that have had a significant event in your program, you probably, agree that while you're dealing with that significant event, a serious child injury, an employee injury, whatever it may be, yeah, it's hard, and it's hard to be optimistic, and it's hard to see the future whenever you're dealing with that big issue right there. But the more we practice, the more we realize, hey, we'll get through this. It's not the end of the world, all right? They're not fatal. Just the winter weather we had here in Texas a couple of weeks ago, I think COVID has prepared us for that week of winter weather, because I don't know about y'all, but we had broken pipes and holes in the ceiling and some pretty bad damage, but it was like, we got this. All right, we got this. And we just move forward right there. As we mature, we find that we make the same mistake unless we learn from them. And that's kind of my big goal here today, is that, we really look at the mistakes that we've made in the past, but I really want us to reflect on what we've learned from them. And when you realize, when you're conscious enough to be able to realize, look how much I learned from that mistake, okay, then you're less likely to make the same mistake again, all right? And that's what we want to do, and that's what maturity is all about right there. And we want to transfer this belief to, our employees. We want to transfer this belief to our children that we work with, all right? That it's all about what we learn, okay? So there you go. And I know, I share this with y'all all the time. I share these with y'all. I think every skill that I have as a leader, I have that skill due to a mistake that I've made in the past, I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for the mistakes and the failure. So you got to be able to recognize that, all right? And then that's a mature thing to do. Also, as we mature, we understand that mistakes are unavoidable, all right? Hey, here's a reality check for all of you. You're not perfect, okay? Here's another reality check for you. You're never going to be perfect. All right, I'm never going to be perfect. We're human, okay? We're human. We're going to make mistakes. Haven't there been several songs about that? There was a Billy Joel song. You're only human. You're bound to make mistakes. All right. So it's going to happen right there. So we know people that are always wanting to be perfect, and perfection is in their blood. We also see these people extremely stressed out, and they don't handle conflict well because they strive for perfection. Now, trying to do things right is definitely a goal and a commitment that we want to make, right? But, mistakes are unavoidable. They're going to happen, especially the unintentional ones, all right? So, yeah, there we go. And and as we mature, we see that even successful people make mistakes. You look at some of your role models out there, celebrities that you look up to, lawmakers and politicians. Everyone's going to make a mistake. My whole thing, especially when I'm looking at people that I admire and I look up to, I'm more concerned about how they recover from the mistake rather than the mistake they made. All right. And of course, nowadays, the thing that we see the most in social media and on TV are, mistakes that people made 20 years ago. And it's just now, coming to surface today. And, people are having to deal with mistakes they made 20, 25 years ago. Does that scare anyone else? That you see these celebrities and politicians that just get in so much trouble over something they've done 15, 20, 25 years ago, and it turns out ruining their career. Have y'all looked back at yourself and things that you have done 10, 15, 20 years ago, and you're like, ew, I'm no different than them. My mistake was probably different. But yikes, I think we all have something that we've done way, way, way back in the past that could be very, very damaging right now. All right. But that's the world we live in right now. There you go. And, above all, as we mature, we gain proper perspective on mistakes and on life, all right? We want to use this as a tool, all right, rather than an obstacle, all right? These are opportunities, they're not obstacles. All right, so I kind of have this list of mistakes kind of broken into some different categories in your leadership journey. And so we'll kind of talk about the different categories and mistakes that people have made and how we can learn from them. But I want to start off this morning, and we'll spend a little bit of time talking about mistakes you have made, all right, in your own words. Here are some mistakes that directors have told me they have made, all right? Because I asked people, in your journey as a leader, what is one of the biggest mistakes that you've ever made? And so I compiled this list. And these right here are in no particular order. So we're probably going to bounce around on topics right here. But these are kind of fun. And again, if you've made this mistake, do the little heart or the smiley face or whatever so that we can all see, ooh, it wasn't just me. All right, thank goodness someone else did this too. How about, and I threw a big one up front, all right? Not terminating a teacher who gossips, all right, which caused morale to go down. How many of y'all have held on to that employee that was a gossip monger or a pot stirrer, all right? I think we've all done that because we've been so afraid of being short-staffed, all right? What am I going to do if I'm short-staffed? Oh my gosh, if I fire that teacher, what are the parents going to think? The parents only see one side of that employee. They only see, the wonderful caregiver and educator that they are. They don't see the personnel side where, they just stir the pot and cause a lot of drama, all right? So sometimes we hold on to these people because we're afraid of the perception from the parents. Well, you as a leader, you've got to be able to see the whole big picture right there. And one of my favorite quotes, and this came from a book called Soup, S-O-U-P, by John Gordon, if y'all want to look that up. The one that stirs the pot leads the team. All right, the one that stirs the pot leads the team. And I totally believe that right there. So this is definitely one of those things that you've got to address right away. We actually have this in our policy manual as grounds for immediate termination, all right? So if anyone that is gossiping or trying to cause drama within the program, you got to go, all right? But don't let that fear of being short-staffed, don't let that fear of having to deal with upset parents get in the way of, protecting your program. I just told a story this week that I haven't told in a long time. I'll tell y'all really, really quick on this one. I had a situation, and this is about 9 years ago, where I was really frustrated with the morale of the school, and we had a lot of negativity, and we had a lot of people stirring the pot, and so I kind of reached that breaking point and was like, we got to do something about this. So, I got with, the other leader of the organization, and I said, hey, I want to make a list of all of the employees, and I want to rank them from the most positive to the most negative, all right? And I want to kind of put everyone in an order right here. This is very confidential, all right? No one's going to see this, but just between us. And so, the other person was like, well, what's your intent? What are you planning to do with this? And I said, well, I'm going to go to work tomorrow, and I'm going to fire the 3 most negative people in the school. I'm tired of this, the other person was like, well, do you really think it's a good idea to fire 3 people at one time? And so we ended up having a big long talk about it. After several glasses of wine, I realized that they were right, that, terminating 3 people at one time, probably not the best idea. But I said, well, I am going to do the top 2. All right. I'm going to do the top 2 right there. And, isn't it ironic that I actually had a lot of documentation on the top 2 negative people's performance. So I actually had some good documentation to move forward with the termination. Isn't it funny how that works out right there? So I did it. I went into the school and I terminated the top 2 negative people in the school based on our little list that we made for reasons that were due to their performance that I had documented. Well, the interesting thing that happened afterwards was that third person, that number 3 person that I was planning to terminate until several glasses of wine, she got her job saved, and she doesn't know about this. She never knew about this. But after I got rid of those 2 negative people, she became a rock star, a complete and total rock star. Almost instantly, her attitude and her performance changed just by getting rid of those 2 negative people. All right. It was so incredible. All right. And she ended up having a very, very long, wonderful, fantastic time with us. And like I said, never had one single issue with her from that day forward. And she never knew that her, head was on the chopping block. All right. So, I love that story because it's just a great way of showing you how negative people have such a huge influence on your team. And if you don't address these pot stirs, they're going to tear your program apart. All right. Someone else said allowing your teachers to be constantly tardy and not addressing their attendance issue. All right. So yeah, this is a good one right here too, that again, we get super busy and we don't address, and we think, oh, 5-10 minutes late for work. Yeah, it's a performance issue, but is it really that serious? Yeah, it is. It's sending a very loud message to your entire team that being prompt and being ready and being anxious to get into that classroom is not important to you. All right. So, we want to encourage our school family to not just be on time, but to be ready to walk into that classroom at their assigned time, ready to make a difference. All right. So, make sure that you're addressing those little bitty issues, something as simple as tardiness right there. Here's a big one. Let's see how many of you have done this. Allowing your personal feelings to get in the way of addressing teacher performance. All right. or let's just say allowing personal feelings to get in the way of teacher performance, period. All right. So, this is hard. All right. But sometimes we really, really like people as a person, but that doesn't mean they're a good performer, right? You like their character, you like their personality, you like being around them, but they're not a good performer, all right? And that's hard because, that's when you're letting your personal feelings get in the way. So, this is definitely a great opportunity for you to lead, all right? Because if that person has a likable personality, then, the potential is there, all right? We just have to find a way to pull that potential out so that their performance will match their likability, all right? And you can do that, but it's going to take practice. Here's the other side of it. And the person that submitted this mistake, I don't know exactly what their intention was, but when I was looking at it, I saw a lot of different ways that this could be handled right there. But knowing that an employee has a lot of drama going on in their personal life, all right, so they've had an illness in the family, they've had a death in the family, they're struggling financially, they're having marriage problems, they're having problems with their kids, so they've got some drama going on at home, which is resulting in their performance not meeting expectations. But I see it where sometimes you don't want to address that performance because you don't want to add more to their drama plate. All right. It's like, how much is going on at home. And so, yeah, her performance is not meeting expectations. But if I pull her in and talk to her about this, it might be the icing on the cake, and we let those personal feelings get in the way right there. All right. I had a situation one time, and this has been a while ago, probably 15 years ago now, but I had an employee that we had an issue, a pretty big issue, and she was I always hate to say older lady because sometimes we get upset with that. I don't want to say mature because she really wasn't mature. I don't know, seasoned doesn't sound good either because that makes her sound like a piece of meat, all right? But she was in her late 50s, early 60s, I'll just say that, okay? And I knew that, her 2 adult children were living with her grandchildren were living with her, she was widowed, so she didn't have a spouse, and basically her paycheck that she got from us was the only income coming into that house, and I knew all of this. Well, we had a situation came up that I really needed to terminate her. She should have been terminated. But it was so hard for me because I knew that if I terminated this woman, I was cutting off the only income in that household. There were multiple people relying on her paycheck. And it was probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. What is the right thing to do here? And I terminated her. All right. I had to do what was best for the entire school. All right. And, the entire staff was aware of the mistake that this teacher had made. And so allowing her to get away with it or allowing her to stay was sending a very, very big message to the rest of the staff that, we're not going to take these things very seriously. And so, I had to make that decision that she had to go, knowing that I just cut off the only income coming into that house, but that was hard. Then I went home and drank a whole box of wine. All right. Yes. Don't get consumed with personal issues. I actually see this on our list quite a bit. Mistakes that directors have made, getting consumed with employees' personal issues and not focusing on their performance. All right. Yes. Here's a big one. terminating a staff member without going through the correct process first. So that knee-jerk, spontaneous termination, all right, without letting them know that their job was in jeopardy, without making an effort to, to correct the expectation or to help them, just doing it. Now, if you have in your policy handbook grounds for immediate termination, and the behavior is definitely something listed as grounds for immediate termination, that's easy, all right? But if it's not a behavior listed in that handbook as grounds for immediate termination, and you do the knee-jerk firing, that can cause you a lot of drama. That could be a big mistake right there. How about this one? Let's see how many hearts and smiley faces or whatever. This one might be a sad face, all right, we see on this one. But mistakes that others have made, becoming personal friends with your staff. All right. And again, this one is super hard because we tend to spend more time with our staff than we do our own family and friends sometimes. And so it's human nature for us to, build that social bond with them. And, it's human nature to want to go to that happy hour, to go to that gathering and let off a little bit of stress and, have that time with them. I'm not going to tell you don't do it because that would make me a hypocrite, because we all do it. What I recommend is that you have the ability to draw the line, all right? You got to have that ability to draw the professional line. And, if you do go out socially with your employees, you got to keep it clean, you got to keep it professional, all right? But if they start going down the rabbit hole of, breaching confidentiality and breaking privacy laws and wanting to get into all that, you got to remove yourself from the equation, all right? Remove yourself from that situation. So, and the other bad thing about becoming friends with your staff is it creates favoritism. All right, it creates favoritism with the other employees. All right, well, that person's getting all the supplies, and that person got a bigger raise, and that person got her time off approved because she's friends with the director. And that could create some legal issues for you right there. All right. I know that we've got a lot of owners that are also watching today, not just leaders, but owner, and you're a leader too, owner. But let's see how many of you give me a thumbs up or a heart or a smiley face on this one. How many of y'all have made the mistake of loaning your employees money? All right, or loaning them money out of your own pocket. All right, so sometimes, this can be a big mistake. I've actually had two pretty significant losses where long-term good employees that asked for a loan, and we gave it to them, set up a payment plan to pay us back, and then, couple of paychecks into the payment plan, they come in and say, well, I need to find another job because I can't pay my bills. My paycheck's not enough to pay my bills. Well, your paycheck's lower because we're taking money out to pay for your loan, and then they walk out and they leave you high and dry. So not only did I just lose a good employee, they also owe me all this money that, you never get. So, have I loaned money to employees before? Yes. Is it the smartest thing to do? No. Have I been burned? Absolutely. Have I had employees that have paid me back 100% successfully? Yes. It's just it's a tough thing to do right there. Most of the time, it ends in drama. All right. There you go. Oh my gosh. How many of y'all have done this one? Hiring friends or family. Ugh. This is definitely a big mistake that a lot of you have probably learned for this one right here. Oh, I see. Paula, that's a great comment right there, Paula. It's kind of hard for me to see the screen. Instead of loaning them money, you help them find other resources. That's a smart thing to do. You're a smart one, Paula. All right. Yes. But hiring friends and family, it always seems like a good idea at the time, but then it goes downhill really fast, especially when you gotta fire them. All right. And having to fire, a family member or one of your best friends is just not good. All right. I actually know of a person. I'm trying to be discreet here. I know of a program that the owner did hire a family member to work at the facility, and they worked there actually for a few years. And then she ended up having to fire her. She should have fired her multiple times before she actually did it. And she ended up having to fire her, which created a ginormous fight in the family with divided sides. And this has probably been 10 or 15 years ago now, and still to this day, this side of the family doesn't talk to this side of the family. All right? It's ugly. And I'm like, oh, and it was all due to her hiring her and then her having to fire her. All right? So, yeah. I got a question. This is a good question, Karen. Do you have employees that are related to each other? I have had that in the past. I've had a lot of mother-daughter situations. I've had a lot of sister-sister, brother-sister situations. We've had that in the past. I have found that it's really important to keep them separate. So they're not working in the same classroom, but they're working on opposite sides of the building if possible. And just making sure that you're setting clear expectations that they're keeping their family drama at home and they're keeping their preschool drama at the preschool. All right. So, those of you that have confidentiality agreements that you have your employees sign, I would probably go a little bit more into detail. If you have employees that are related to each other, sit down with them and say, hey, when you are having family gatherings, when you're getting together, with each other at home, you got to make sure you're following this confidentiality agreement. I know you're related. I know you're sister and sisters, but you still have to follow our confidentiality rules. Because when they're blood related and they're at home, they tend to think that these rules don't apply to them. All right, because they're related, it's okay for us to have this conversation. No, it's still not okay. All right. My problem that I have had in the past, so for example, I had a whole family. I had two sisters and a brother that worked for me all at the same time at the same facility, and they were so really good about keeping it professional, and they never brought their family drama into the school. They were very, very professional and really, really awesome. My problem I had with them was when Grandpa died, and then all three of them were out for bereavement and had to travel to another state for the funeral, and so that left us extremely short-staffed, losing three people to bereavement at the same time. And I couldn't just say, well, two of you can go and one of you's got to stay. I couldn't do that, right? It was their grandfather. So, those are things you don't think about, sometimes when you're hiring family members right there. Oh, so Melody just said, I just see that. Melody just said the exact same thing I just talked about. Three of them were out for a funeral at the same time. Yes, there you go. Now, I understand that some of you are in really small country towns, and sometimes hiring your family is the only staff you can get. Trust me, I get it. All right, I get it. I would just make sure that, you are able to establish that professional line and that it's followed. All right. So there you go. How about not reporting an incident to licensing when you should have? Okay. I'm going to add to this, knowingly not reporting an incident to licensing when you should have, thinking, oh, that parent's cool. All right, that parent's totally fine. You know, they're not going to report us or anything. So you don't report it to licensing, and it should have been a reportable incident. And even though that was a super cool parent, you know, it still gets back to licensing somehow, or it comes up in a monitoring visit. Yeah, that's not good. And getting a deficiency for failure to report, that's not going to be good on your record right there. So, you know, here's one thing that I love, and we've definitely seen this this transition over the last 5 years in particular, that when you do have an incident in your program, licensing is looking more at how well did you handle it versus the incident itself. All right, and I have worked with multiple programs that you know, got very, very lucky with how licensing cited them based on an incident, but it was more about how well did the director handle it versus the incident itself, where they should have been cited for a whole list of things, but because the director was so thorough and so prompt and handled it so professionally, they only got cited for maybe 1 or 2 things. And I've actually had some conversations with some licensing supervisors about this, and it's the truth, all right? They're really looking at how well did you handle the situation rather than the incident itself, all right? Because they're aware that mistakes are going to happen, all right? So if you have a reportable incident, make sure you're reporting it, all right? There you go. Y'all know that this is one of my big pet peeves right here. I talk about this one a lot, but a mistake that someone has made, not documenting right away. All right, you know, documentation. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. Okay, and sometimes we think, oh, I'll document later on. Maybe at the end of the week I'll get caught up on my documentation. You're never going to get caught up. All right, you're never going to get caught up. So have a journal, have processes. You know, we have multiple different forms that we've created in our organization, whether it's a parent concern form, a staff communication form, you know, a CCMS log, a food program log. You know, I've got all these different processes in place to help us with proper documentation, so that not only is it proper and good documentation, but it's organized documentation. All right. ProCare, you know, a lot of you are ProCare users. I'm a big advocate for ProCare. We love them. They're actually one of my sponsors. So thank you, ProCare, for being a Tim the Trainer sponsor. You know, but the ProCare logs, you know, the little journal icon, both for the kids and the family and the employees, utilize those logs in ProCare. They are fantastic. And especially, you know, if you're needing to share your communication with other leaders, other members of management in your organization, those ProCare logs are fantastic. You know, so that everybody's on the same page and everyone can see what conversation took place or what direction was given. What did I tell this parent? You know, those type of things. It's great. We actually had a semi-ugly, not really, but you know, it was a semi-ugly unemployment claim one time, and the ProCare log is what we won. We won over the ProCare log because my director at this particular school was so awesome at documenting pretty much every step this employee took in ProCare. And so you could literally publish this log as a book. There was that much in there. And so we actually won the unemployment claim using that log out of ProCare. So there you go. So again, those of you that are ProCare users, if you look on the family data page, where you've got the family data at the top and the child's data at the bottom, you'll see like a little notebook or a journal. All right. And same thing with the employees, and it looks like one of those notebooks or journals. If you just click on that, you can create these journal entries, and they're fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. All right. And they're good stuff. All right. Not keeping up with training of staff and not keeping up with criminal background checks. It's kind of two different things, but it was submitted as one answer. Yeah, and y'all know, those of you that watched my webinar at the end of last year on the most commonly cited minimum standards, y'all know that in both 2008 and 2009, not documenting training hours and not getting the appropriate training were in the top 10 deficiencies, both in 2008 and 2009. And I've heard a lot of you have given me feedback throughout 2020 that, this has been a really big spotlight for licensing, that when they're coming in to do their monitoring visits, they're really paying close attention to training logs, all right? And making sure that your employees are getting the correct training, that 6 of the 24 hours are in child growth and development, age-appropriate activities, teacher-child interactions, positive guidance and discipline. That was in the top 10 deficiencies, is that people are not getting those 6 hours in those 4 subjects. The other one are the 6 topics that are required every single year. The emergency preparedness, the food allergies, the recognizing illnesses, building premises, handling, storing of hazardous waste. All right, those 6 topics, people are getting cited all over the state because your employees are not getting those every year. So I think this is a good mistake that was submitted right here, not keeping up with training of staff. All right, have a good system. Now, I just shared this week, I just got done with director credential class yesterday. All right, hang on, I'm reading someone. Rosie, I have to totally disagree with your comment right there. And if you want to call me offline, I'll be happy to discuss it with you. But licensing telling you that they couldn't use ProCare, that's none of their business. All right, has absolutely nothing to do with licensing, and them telling you what software you can and cannot use is absolutely none of their business. So sounds to me like you probably had a user error or something, or a communication issue, but yeah, that was a weird comment right there. Anyways, but yeah, and background checks, y'all know that with some of the changes that we had in 2019, only having to do background checks every 5 years now has definitely made keeping up with background checks easier. I think, in my opinion, that now that we're getting to eligibility letters, that seems to be easier to keep track of everything, instead of getting those 3 emails that we used to get in the past that we had to keep up with. Now we're just getting 1 email with the eligibility letter. I think it's a lot easier to keep up with criminal background checks now. But definitely you don't want to get a deficiency on this, because it turns into an administrative penalty. All right, so there you go. Arguing with a parent. Oh, that's a good mistake that people have made with. Now, I talk about this in discipline and guidance trainings, all right? What's the difference between a conversation and an argument? And I think this is what you should reflect on right here. What is the difference between an argument and a conversation? Well, body language and tone. Body language and tone is what turns something into an argument, all right? So we just have to practice composure, all right? And role model composure so that that parent doesn't change their body language and tone. But if we can just maintain composure, it remains a conversation and it doesn't turn into an argument. How many of y'all have done this? I'm just curious, and that's the great thing about the little hearts or the thumbs up is, it's a little discreet. How many of you have ever called the wrong parent when a child is ill? All right, called the wrong parent when a child was ill. Oops. Okay. I think that more people have done this than want to admit right there. All right. Yeah. Stephanie, high five on your response right there. We don't argue. We just back up our response with minimum standards, the parent handbook, and operational policies. Woo! Great answer right there. Yes, always give that supporting documentation. It's not me making up this stuff. These are the rules, the regulations, the policies that we're required to follow and enforce. Love it. Anytime you can provide that documentation or that support, it keeps it nice and clean. All right. So love that response right there. Yeah. I did a webinar last year on documentation tips, and we talked about this in documentation tips. Anytime a teacher turns in an accident or an incident report to you, make sure you read it. Make sure you look into it before you sign it. Never blindly sign a document without reading it and looking into it first. Hopefully, because you are visually going back there and looking at the child or checking on the child, that will contact the right parent, all right? Because what I have experienced when I have seen leaders call the wrong parent, it's because the teacher gave them the wrong name. Or the teacher just calls up to the office over the intercom and says, "Hey, can you call Kevin's mom? He's got a fever." And then as soon as you get off the intercom, the phone rings and then the doorbell rings, and then you go back to the desk and you're like, "Who did she tell me has a fever? Oh, it was Mark. That's it." All right. So again, actually go back there and look into the situation. There you go. Paula, I think I'm going to put your response on a t-shirt. We need that on a t-shirt, and we need to not even sell it. Let's just give it away. Okay. Policies are your best friend. I love it. All right. Absolutely love it. All right. Good. There you go. I see a comment to take a photo of the injury for yourself. Don't be sending that photo to anybody, okay? If you want to take it for yourself, as long as it's done in a way that doesn't shame or embarrass the child, you don't want to shame or embarrass the child, okay. But I would not be sending that to the parent because you're incriminating yourself. All right? You're incriminating yourself by sending that photo. But if you want to do it for your own records, I'm cool with that as long as the child is not shamed or embarrassed. All right? Letting another employee know that you're going to fire someone. Hey, I just want to let you know. Hey, Paula, I just want to let you know that I'm going to fire Stephanie today. Okay? You let me know if she said anything. Yeah, that's not professional. That's not ethical right there. And she's probably going to let Stephanie know. All right? You better start packing up your stuff now because you're going after lunch. All right? Yeah, there you go. Letting a terminated employee come back and visit. Oh, why would you do that? All right? That's a big mistake because stirring the pot right there. Sending a 2-year-old child home with no underwear on. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely a mistake. But I don't know. There's a lot of different ways that we could take that one or what could have happened right there. But yeah, definitely a mistake. Oh, here's a big one. And we're about to move on to our next category right here. How many of you have done this? I want to see how many responses we get on this one. All right. Trusting my licensing rep. All right. Trusting my licensing rep was a mistake. All right. Oh, that one I got the little face that's laughing. That's a good one. our licensing friends are human too, all right? They also make mistakes. But I'm going to go back up to the comment that was made earlier because I think it was a fantastic comment. Always back yourself up with minimum standards, policies, and processes. So, if your licensing rep tells you something, don't just let them tell you, make them show you. All right? Can you show me in the book where it says this? All right? Show me in writing. Can you show me in writing where that standard is at so that I can make sure I fully understand the expectation and properly train my staff? All right? That's how I would handle that, but don't just verbally take their word for it. And I know I've said this a bajillion times in the last year, all right? Always ask your licensing rep to send their response to you in an email, okay? So if you get guidance from them over the phone, can you send me an email with that as well? Because you want to get it in writing, all right? Getting in writing right there, all right? But Laura, I love your response right here too. Never be afraid to ask questions, all right? Yes, that's what they're there for, all right? They're there to give you guidance. They're there to support you, all right? And I have found that it strengthens the relationship whenever you are confident enough to be able to ask them a question, all right? But just get that answer in writing right there. Stephanie, yes, no minimum standards for yourself. Oh, we just talked about this in class this week, actually. It is not your licensing rep's job to keep you in compliance. It is your job to keep you in compliance, all right? Sometimes I have people say, well, my licensing rep has never said anything about that. Well, my licensing rep didn't tell me I was wrong. Well, all right, they probably just came in and did a sampling of the standards when they did your monitoring visit. Whatever it is that is an issue now wasn't on their radar at the time. It's not their job to keep you in compliance. It's your job to keep you in compliance. And Paula, you're right. Sometimes it's a different interpretation. That's why I like it in writing, all right? Now, I don't know if y'all have noticed, but since licensing has gone over to Health and Human Services, since we've transitioned over to Health and Human Services, the interpretation issues that we've had with the standards across the state is getting better. I have definitely seen a lot more consistency with interpretation around the state, all right? So high five to them for that one, and I know that the commissioner that we have over childcare licensing, this was a big goal for her, was to get licensing reps cross-trained so that we have more consistency on interpretation, and I think she's doing a good job, all right? Stephanie says she carries her minimum standards with her around the center. I love that. I love it. High five to you, all right? Yes. Pam, I agree with you too. I've actually done this many times. If you don't like the way licensing writes a narrative, ask them to change it. I've done that before too, especially with administrative reviews. All right. On Rosie saying the one that likes to make up her own rules based on her opinions. Oh, that's a big issue. We've definitely seen that. So that's where I always, whenever they come up with something, what standard number are you referring to, licensing rep? Because they can't just make up their own rules. They have to cite you for a standard number. So if they bring something out of the blue or something that's out in left field, ask them, what standard number are you referring to? And let's turn to that page and let's look at it. All right? That's how I would handle that situation right there. Good. All right. This is so funny because so many of these mistakes have come up in conversation just over the last couple of weeks. Hiring someone based on need and not based on qualification and education, or qualification and experience. That's a big mistake. You know, I always say, y'all hear me say this over and over again, I would rather be short-staffed than to have the wrong person in the classroom. When you hire someone out of desperation, you're going to pay for it in the long run. All right? You don't want the wrong person in that room. It's going to cost you more down the road than being short-staffed right now. So hiring someone because you're desperate, hiring someone because you need someone right now, and not looking at qualification and experience, that's a big mistake. And I do believe, okay, and I've got a situation going on right now that's pretty tough. That, you know, be patient when it comes to hiring. I do believe that the right person will come at the right time. You just got to trust. All right? You got to be patient and have trust. And the right person will come around. All right? Giving parents extra time to pay, making exceptions and giving parents extra time to pay. They're normally going to burn you. All right? You cannot deliver quality care and education unless you are properly funded. Okay? So when people don't pay you, you can't provide a quality program. So there you go. Karen's asking, when we have an open position, do you promote it within first, or do you always post it publicly? I'm going to refer you to your policies on that one. So what do you have in your policies as far as recruitment is concerned? If your policy does say that you're going to post any open positions within the organization first, and then after 10 days it will be posted publicly, that's what I most commonly see, then obviously you need to follow your policies. If you don't have a policy on recruitment, then you can post both at the same time, all right? Legally, you do need to give your current employees an opportunity to fill that position if they are qualified and if they are the best applicant for that position, all right? Doesn't guarantee them. They still have to be the best person for that position, but they do need to be given the opportunity, all right? Now, in our world, in our early education world, most of the time when you have an open position, everybody knows about it. All right? The whole school knows that you're short-staffed. So we don't really deal with this issue very often. You know, well, I didn't know there was an open position. I would have applied for it. Usually everybody knows. It's not like we're a Fortune 500 company and there's an opening in HR level 2 and that tech person didn't know that that was available and they wanted to apply. That's not our world, all right? People normally always know that we have an opening, all right? So there you go. All right. Oh, I love this one. Now, I don't love this one, but here's a big mistake that people have made and they've learned from it. Directors not following their own cell phone policy. We got to lead by example, don't we? All right, we got to lead by example. If having your cell phone out is grounds for immediate termination for your staff, it needs to be followed by the administrators too. All right. Now, if you have a company-owned cell phone and you are performing business duties, and that's part of your job description, is to answer that phone for business functions. That's a little bit of a different story. Texting your husband about dinner tonight, or on the phone with your children talking about their chores, yeah, you got to lead by example. Whatever you're enforcing for your staff, you need to be doing the same thing. So unless you're performing a business duty right there. All right. Someone sent in, I was kind of laughing at this one a little bit, mistakes that you have made. Left the laminator on all night. Wonder what the outcome was on that one. I'm hoping they just came into a stinky, smoky building. Hopefully they didn't have property damage due to it, but that would be bad right there. All right. I got a question. What if you use a phone app on your cell phone for your program? That's a good question, and I'm glad you brought that up. We actually, in our leadership symposium that we had last week. Someone had brought this up, and I didn't get the opportunity to respond to it. You know, and I kind of felt bad about that. The thing about these apps that you are using to communicate either with parents or employees, that y'all really need to be aware of is that if you are requiring your employees to use their personal devices, you now have a wage and hour issue. All right. Technically, under the Texas Employers Guidebook, if you're requiring your employees to use their personal devices to perform business duties, you have to reimburse them for the cost of that device or the service of that device. All right. So first recommendation, if you're using an app, you know, like ProCare Connect or any of those things, I would make sure it's being done with a business-owned device. Okay, a business-owned tablet or a business-owned device. That's going to take out the wage and hour issue. All right. The other thing is that you don't want your employees performing these duties after hours. Okay, so if they're responding to parents or they're responding to the director, you know, at night or on the weekends, again, you have a wage and hour issue. If you send that employee a text message at 9 o'clock at night asking them something about their job and they respond to you, you need to pay them for that time. All right, so boundaries are your friend. All right. Anything work related needs to be handled during work hours. Otherwise, don't be messaging them, calling them, sending them messages on apps and expecting a response if it's after hours on the weekend. Okay, make sure that you're addressing this during their working hours. So there you go on that one. But the biggest thing is, again, if you're using these apps, all right, make sure that it's done on a business-owned device is my recommendation. Otherwise, like I said, you're going to run into wage and hour laws. All right. So there you go. So Stephanie's saying that at her program, you know, the only app that's being, or the only device that's being used is the directors. So that's a good, clean way of doing it. All right. Just to let y'all know, we got a couple of different Stephanies that are responding. I don't want y'all to think that Stephanie is like an attention hog and just wanting to get all of the attention. There's a few Stephanies that are on the webinar today. There you go. Let's talk about being a new director. Now, some of you might be a brand new director. You might be a brand new leader. But, you know, even if you're a veteran and you've been doing this for a long time, reflect back to when you were a brand new director. You know, we can learn a whole lot about our current situation when we reflect back of what it was like when you were brand new. All right. And I think that, you know, especially with the past year that we've had, being able to reflect back and remembering what it was like to be a brand new director is a great learning opportunity. All right. So here are some mistakes that we gathered, and I'm only going to talk about a few of them here. Mistakes that being a new director that were made. Talking to the old director. I actually really like this response right here. You need to be able to form opinions on your own. All right. You need to be able to create your version of reality on your own. See the performance of the center through your set of eyes. And when you talk to somebody, especially somebody that's exiting the program, either by their choice or someone else's, they tend to give you a false impression of what's really going on. And you need to be able to form those opinions on your own. All right. So yeah. Oh, I see a comment that just popped up on the screen that she's here. She's a first-time director, and she's a first-time director during the pandemic. All right. I actually have 2 directors within my own organization right now that are in the same boat. I think y'all need a special club, Karen. All right. Not only first-year directors, but first year as a director during a pandemic. All right. y'all need a special club because my hat is off to y'all. All right, we need to celebrate you. We just need to take you to happy hour, okay? Because y'all deserve a whole lot. Yeah, Pam says, bless you both. Yeah, and so that's what I keep telling my two directors, that, you know, once we get into a post-pandemic world, they get to start their first year all over again. They're going to get a redo. They deserve a redo. Yes, exactly. Leaving your documentation, leaving your notes out for other people to see. Ooh, that's a big mistake right there. Make sure that your journals, your documentation are kept in a discreet place so that other people can't come and read it. Yeah, that's a big mistake right there. Staying in your office or behind the front desk too much. Y'all know I say this all the time too. You cannot be an effective director behind a desk. All right? Being a director of an early education program, you got to be out there. You got to be out in that lobby connecting with your parents. You got to be in those classrooms connecting with your staff, leading by example, downloading that all right? Creating that environment that people want to work in. And you can't do any of that behind a desk, all right? You got to be out there and be present, all right? I honestly think the director's office is one of the biggest waste of space we have in our building sometimes. We need it for meetings and things like that, but most of your time is going to be spent out there and being present. So I thought that was a good response right there. What do y'all think about this one? A mistake that someone has made. Picking the school gossip as a mentor or information gatherer. You know, yeah, and maybe you didn't realize that, you know, when you connected with this person that they were the school, you know, gossip monger, and then you probably realized it later on. But yeah, they're gonna feed your head with a lot of false information as well. I didn't highlight this one, but I just saw it on the piece of paper and it kind of made me giggle inside a little bit. Mistakes that other brand new directors have made. And again, you can discreetly do your little heart or your thumbs up or your little smiley face because I can't see who's doing it. How many of y'all have ever made the mistake of flirting with a parent? All right. That's a big time mistake. You know, flirting with your customers or flirting with your employees can very quickly turn into a sexual harassment claim. All right. And you don't want that in your program. You're here to get a job done, not to fall in love. All right. Go somewhere else for that. Mistake that someone made, saying that some teachers are better than others. Well, that's not very encouraging, is it? All right. So yeah, that's one of those comments that you want to keep inside of your head. All right. And definitely not say out loud to the other staff. All right. I got a comment. What about the plumber? All right. Is it okay to flirt with the plumber? You know what? That's actually a really, really good question right there from Karen. We actually, hey, one of our webinars that we have coming up next, no, it's next month. April 8th, I believe is the date. I had to move this webinar for a couple of different reasons, but we're going to have a webinar on understanding insurance options, and Laura from Hibbs Hallmark is going to be a special guest with me. We were going to do it last week or the week before last, but due to the winter weather, we rescheduled her for April. But anyways, one of the biggest insurance claims that they are seeing these days, like over the last 2 years, this has been a huge claim, is under your professional liability insurance, people being sued, child care centers being sued for sexual harassment because the front office staff is flirting with the delivery drivers. And that UPS delivery man or that FedEx or that grocery delivery person are getting offended by your flirting and they're filing lawsuits against you. So, I know that comment was probably made as a joke, but it's actually a really big legal trend right now that, women, ladies, you can be sued for sexual harassment too, all right? Just like men can. But we're starting to see this big trend where delivery drivers are suing front office staff for sexual harassment, all right? So just a little tidbit of information for you right there. All right. So that's craziness right there. Craziness. Great. This is a good one. Like, we could do a whole 3-hour webinar just on this one mistake right here. All right. Creating one management style for everyone. Okay. That's a good one. I mean, it's a bad mistake. It's a good comment. Yeah, you're going to have to reach out to each individual employee and create a management style for each person. You got to find their love language, all right? And we actually did this webinar, a while back. You can find it on my website, timthetrainer.com. But, using love languages and leadership. But you got to reach each individual person and find their love language and adapt your leadership style to that person. Another webinar that I've got coming up soon is generational leadership, where you've got to look at each generation of employees, whether they're a builder or a baby boomer or a Gen Xer or millennial A, B, or C, and now an O, and you have to adapt your leadership style to their characteristics. So this was a good entry right here, making the mistake of trying to use a cookie cutter approach to leadership. All right, it doesn't work right there. All right. I'm just kind of looking at comments. Christina saying she's had the opposite, where delivery drivers flirting with staff. Yeah, I've had that before too. Definitely an issue. And same thing. You, as the leader of the program, you got to deal with that. You need to deal with it seriously, because that is definitely a bad harassment claim if your employees file a harassment charge, and especially if you were aware that the delivery driver were making these advancements and you didn't do anything about it. That's not good. Okay, so we need to have a very difficult conversation with that delivery service or that company about their drivers and their behavior. Okay, but that's bad. I actually had a situation a few years ago, very, very similar to what Christina brought up, where it was our food vendor and the delivery guy for the food vendor that had his eye on one of our teachers, and we had to address that. All right, not a good situation. All right, building your team. Of course, one of the most important roles in a leadership position is to transfer belief and to build culture. I talk a lot about building your school family, and I do believe that your school family is the foundation of your program. So it all starts with a solid and healthy school family. And that's what we call our team in my world, all right? So mistakes that people have made when building their team, all right? So there you go. Only hiring staff that went to college, all right? Now, I'm all about, higher education. Let's get that education. I'm all for it. We really, really promote the CDA, the Child Development Associate's credential in our program. Of course, people that want to go back to school to get their associates or their bachelors, I'm all for it. But I'm also a ginormous fan of experience, a ginormous fan of real life experience, and, I'm just going to be honest, and I'm going to say it. Some of the best early educators I've ever worked with, had a GED and never stepped foot in a college, all right? But they had life skills, and they had life experiences, and they were fantastic. So you gotta look for both, All right, and you got to be flexible enough that you look for both, education and experience. All right. Now, the tricky part of this is that if you're a Texas Rising Star participant, if you're wanting to get nationally accredited, we take all of our schools through the National Accreditation Commission. Then you do need to have a percentage of your employees with a minimum of a CDA or higher. So, this is a great opportunity for you to take these people that have a lot of life experience and hold their hand and take them through a CDA course and help them, get some of that further education. That's great opportunities right there, but I like life experience. I do. And I sometimes like to hire people with no experience. Because when I hire someone with no experience, I don't have to untrain them before I train them. I get them with a blank slate. All right? And that's really nice when you get someone with a blank slate, and then I can train them the way I want them to be trained. I can download and I can lend the skills that I want them to have. I don't have to worry about the wrong skills that someone else has given them. So I like, those people with no experience sometimes, depending on the position I'm hiring for. All right. So, if I'm looking for a lead pre-K teacher, yeah, I'm probably going to be looking for someone with some good experience and good knowledge. But, if I need an assistant teacher, might be a great opportunity to open the door for someone. Here's what I like to, tell people about this. Every single one of us on this webinar right now, we are where we are because someone believed in us. Okay, you wouldn't be where you're at right now unless someone believed in you at some point in time. Someone gave you a chance. All right? So now, being in a leadership role, it's your opportunity to return the favor. And you get to give someone else a chance. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Stephanie, I love your comment too. So I agree with you, and especially in this industry. I have another webinar coming up in the near future. I'm going to do a legislative update. We are in the middle of our legislative session here in Texas. And so just a little preview of that. We do have a piece of legislation filed here in Texas in regards to employee turnover and enhancements in professional development. And so we don't know a whole lot about it, just yet. I mean, I've got the bill, I've got the language of the bill, but as far as where it's going to go, how it's going to go, whether or not it's going to be passed, it's too early to tell any of that. But it is, kind of exciting that our lawmakers are recognizing that turnover in this industry is an issue, and whether it's pay or additional professional development, we got to look at something so that we can eliminate the turnover in our field. Now, I think a lot of the recognition that we have received during the pandemic and, being recognized as essential, our lawmakers in the community finally realizing that we are the backbone of the economy. And, if we're not quality and we're not there, then people can't work. And so that's exciting, even with the vaccine announcement this week from President Biden, and then even in our state and Governor Abbott. Is anyone else like, President Biden specifically said childcare workers, public school teachers and childcare workers must be immediately, put on the list to receive vaccines. And just that recognition that we got called out, I'm like, yes, because normally we have to fight to weasel our way into a category. And, just the simple fact that we were included was like magical. I mean, y'all, I was like glowing and dancing whenever those announcements came out, because, and how silly is that? It's just that simple recognition that we actually got called out right there. But I think that's going to help with the reputation and the turnover and people being proud of what they do. So that's pretty cool right there. Another mistake, building your team. Another mistake that directors have made is not preparing for the interview. Very good response right here. I love this one. You know, before you schedule an interview with someone, the first thing I like to do is pull up their previous employers on childcare licensing's website and look at their previous employer's compliance history. Even if they were an assistant toddler teacher, I still do this, because if they are coming from a place that has really bad compliance, then they're probably going to bring bad habits with them. You're going to have to do a lot of untraining before you can train with these folks. If they're coming to you from a place with good compliance history, they're more likely to bring good habits, all right? So I like to do that. And of course, I like to look them up on social media too, all right? So Facebook or Instagram or whatever, all right? But you got to prepare yourself for an interview, and every interview is going to be a little bit different based on the applicant, all right? Now, we just had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, but you know, I know a lot of you are very, very frustrated with scheduling interviews and then the people not showing up. You know, and you may have 7 applications come in, 3 of them return a phone call, and you schedule 3 interviews, maybe 1 shows up. It's frustrating, I get it. You know, my recommendation on that is, number 1, start doing a phone screening first, okay? So call them up on the phone, ask a few questions over the phone that are related to the job description, related to the position that you're filling, and do a phone screening first. Then, you know, and this all might be in the same day, all right? And then do a FaceTime or a Zoom. Do a virtual interview, all right? You know, with that person, so at least I can see them face to face. And even with a virtual interview, a Zoom, did they get dressed? Do they have, you know, did they fix their hair? Do they have kids bouncing around in the background? You can tell a lot just by a virtual interview or a FaceTime. Then you can schedule that in-person interview. I think that if you do your phone screening and then you do a virtual interview, by the time you get to the in-person, you're going to know whether or not they're committed enough to show up. All right, and I think you're going to reduce a lot of this frustration if you just spend a little bit of extra time screening. All right, but prepare yourself for each individual applicant. All right, so there you go. I would ask for a time to call rather than just randomly calling them and catching them off guard, because again, they may have things going on in the background or may have things going on in their life that it might not be a good time for a phone call where you're forming opinions. You know, hey Tasha, do you think you can take about a 5 or 10 minute phone call around 3 o'clock today? Would that time work for you? I just need about 5 or 10 minutes of your time. Is 3 o'clock good? I think that scheduling it is still a good idea because you don't want to catch them off guard. All right. Not going over the job description during interviews. This is something else, a mistake that someone has made. Yeah, that's a good one too. Definitely, every single interview you do, you need to have a copy of the job description out, all right? Not only for you, but for the applicant, because your entire interview should be based on that job description. Any question you ask in an interview, if it does not have to do with the job description, don't ask it, all right? So we want that job description out and available right there, all right? Oh, how did spam get on our webinar? That's crazy right there. All right, I'm trying to scare new employees. Yeah, that's not going to help build your team right there for sure. All right, someone submitted this one, and this is definitely a mistake. All right, not remembering a new hire's name. Yeah, that's not going to make them feel too welcomed right there. Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Let's go on now. Here's another one. Here's the last one I want to talk about with building your team. Only dealing with staff performance during evaluation time. That is a big issue for sure. All right. Sorry, I'm just taking care of something. All right, only dealing with staff performance during evaluation time. This is actually a legal trend, all right? And it's a big legal trend that we have in our industry. You need to make sure that you're dealing performance as it happens. And performance is always dealt with in a documented way, all right? You discipline based on documentation. You promote based on documentation. Your annual performance review should be based on documentation. This all comes from the Texas Employer Guidebook, all right? They stress this quite a bit, all right? But during an annual performance review is not the time to deal with performance expectations. When you have an employee that's not meeting your expectations, that needs to be dealt with at that moment, all right? Not during the annual performance review. Anything that you have in the annual performance review, they should have seen before. All right? So that's kind of the way I like to look at it. They should never be surprised by a comment in the annual performance review because they've seen it, they've heard it before. All right? The other mistake that we make with annual performance reviews is that we only evaluate the current time period, all right? So what's going on with this employee? What's going on in the classroom right now? When you should be evaluating the entire year, all right? And sometimes that can get you into a lot of trouble right there. So make sure you're keeping lots of notes, lots of journal entries, so that when it comes time to write that annual performance review, you can evaluate the entire year, not just what's happening right now. Okay, so that was a good mistake that someone submitted right there. All right, I got a question. Do you deal with it immediately or when their shift is over? That's a very good question, and let me tell you how the courts look at this. All right, whether it's a performance expectation or a termination, here's the way the court will view this. Okay. If the behavior was tolerated until the end of their shift, then why can't it be tolerated always? Obviously, it's not that big of a risk if you were able to tolerate it till the end of their shift, okay, or the end of the week, all right? So that's kind of how your legal team is going to look at it. Was the behavior tolerated for any period of time? So to answer your question, you want to deal with it immediately, all right? You don't want to create that stage where you're tolerating the behavior, all right? So very, very good question. You know, this kind of takes me back to something I say a lot to y'all in leadership trainings. Anytime you're making a decision or you're dealing with a situation in your program, always ask yourself, how would this be perceived by a jury? All right? How would this be perceived by a jury? And if I'm waiting to the end of the shift or I'm waiting till the end of the week to deal with their performance, then I'm tolerating it. All right? So that's the viewpoint on that one. Let's talk about dealing with tough situations. You're like, Tim, that's been the last 12 months, all right? That's been 2020, right? And now Snowvid. But I'm dealing with tough situations. And I wanted to talk about this because, you know, this is when we make the most mistakes. This is when we learn the most as well, all right? When we're dealing with tough situations, this is when we're growing. You know, I had posted this on Facebook a few months ago now. I want to say it was October or November. And my one of my best friends who's an attorney actually shared it with me. But you know, what if 2020 is actually the best year of your life? And if you really look back on this past year and reflect on how much we've grown and how much we've learned and how much we've been through, and look at your leadership style now compared to March of 2020, you're a completely different leader now. All right. So, what if 2020 ends up being the best year of your life, both personally and professionally? Y'all, it all comes down to intent. Okay. It all comes down to how you look at things. So, dealing with tough situations, I know it's hard right now, but, you got a lot of opportunities to learn right here. The first mistake that people have made during tough situations is thinking that you can't handle a tough situation. All right? Thinking I can't handle, the significant event, the broken pipes, the COVID, whatever, a child cutting their finger off. When your adrenaline starts flowing, it's amazing what you can handle. And what I have experienced in my career is that during tough situations is when we really see true leadership come out. All right? And how well and how thorough you handle situations, it happens during tough situations. So don't underestimate yourself. You might be surprised at what you can handle. All right? I always tell the story about 8 years ago. We actually had tornadoes and softball-sized hail hit one of my programs, and it was scary. It was probably one of the scariest moments of my life. A building full of children and staff, and softball-sized hail and wind hitting our building. It was amazing to me how incredible not only the adults were, but the kids were fantastic during that storm. Everyone was calm. Everyone did what they were supposed to do. And it was just like this surreal experience, The freaking out and the panic didn't happen until after it was over. After it was over is when everyone lost their mind. But during the actual storm, there's no words to describe how just amazing everybody was. So, you never know, how well you're going to handle a situation like that. All right. Assuming that other people have all of the facts. All right. So, again, we just were having this conversation a couple of weeks ago with a particular situation. And one thing I was trying to coach to the group that I was talking to is that, you've got to be able to see this particular situation from their point of view, from, their version of reality. You have a lot of information about what's going on. They have very limited information about what's going on. All right. So obviously their opinion or perception is going to be very different than yours because of the lack of information or what you have versus what they have. So making an assumption that someone has all of the information they need to form a good opinion, that is a big assumption. All right. So, once again, in the absence of communication, negativity fills the void. So this is where communication is very important. Communicating with the right people at the right time. All right? Yes. Rosie said that's why it's so important to practice all of your drills. Yes, yes, yes. Okay? And here's what I recommend. Every time you have a staff meeting, okay, whether you're doing staff meetings monthly or bi-monthly or once a quarter, whatever it is that you do, take a piece of your emergency preparedness plan and practice at least one part of your emergency preparedness plan in every staff meeting. All right? So tonight, we're going to practice severe weather drills just with your employees. All right? Tonight, we're going to practice gas leak. Tonight, we're going to practice intruder. All right? Tonight, we're going to practice, a chemical spill. all right? And just go through your emergency preparedness list and practice it in every staff meeting, because you have to practice it with the adults first before the adults can practice it with the children. Makes sense, right? You have to practice with the adults first before the adults can practice with the children. So do it in a staff meeting and just take it piece by piece. And make sure everyone is very serious. All right, I know that when we do role playing, everyone likes to giggle and laugh and turn into characters and be silly. When we're doing emergency preparedness, we're going to be serious. All right, but you got to practice them, and there you go. All right, not following up, y'all. Again, whether it's a parent complaint, a parent concern, a staff with an issue, your follow-up is the biggest part of dealing with that tough situation. All right, going back to that person 24 hours later. Hey, I just wanted to follow up on that conversation we had yesterday. How are you feeling? All right, do you need any more information? All right, but make sure you have a good process in place to follow up, all right, with all parties involved in a tough situation. That's one of the reasons why I have my parent concern form that I mentioned earlier, because my favorite part of the parent concern form is it reminds you to follow up. It reminds you to follow up. And that's the most important part of dealing with a tough situation. Another big mistake that people have made when dealing with tough situations: ignoring employee issues or employee concerns. Once again, this is another top 10 legal trend, all right? So when you have an employee that comes to you with a concern or an issue, you've got to make the time for them. You've got to give them your full attention. But blowing them off and not making time for them can cost you in the long run, all right? So you got to be there for them. You got to be there for them. So that's a good one right there. Let's go on now to some of your leadership skills, all right? Your leadership skills and mistakes that people have made when dealing with leadership skills. We got two things left here to talk about in our time. I'm watching our time because I want to make sure you've got plenty of time to do your online worksheet today, because it's going to ask you to reflect a lot. So it's going to take you a little bit more time to do your worksheet today. A big mistake that people have made with leadership skills: not giving employees a reason to trust you. All right? Just because you're the director doesn't mean trust is automatic. All right? You have to earn trust. You have to build trust. You have to maintain trust. All right? It's not automatically given. Okay? So especially a new director, veteran director, doesn't matter where you're at in your stage of leadership, but you got to give employees a reason to trust you. All right? Now, in my opinion, follow through, okay, is going to build trust. So if you say you're going to do something, do it. All right? Follow through. Holding people accountable. All right? And being consistent with your accountability is going to build trust. Be compassionate. All right? Recognize that they're human too, but you can still hold them accountable and be compassionate at the same time. All right? And be positively contagious. Be passionate about what you're doing. You got to believe in your school more than anyone in that building. And when you believe in your facility, people will trust you. All right? But that's what we're going to do to help in that situation. But my biggest piece of advice on this one, once again, is follow through. Okay? Follow through. I love your comment, Chris. Yes. We actually talked about this in a webinar I did a couple of weeks ago as well. Boundaries. Boundaries are your best friend. Where I was talking about this a couple of weeks ago is we did a leadership training for preventing burnout and preventing directors and leaders from burning out in your program. And one way that you can prevent burnout is by setting boundaries. All right, you got to close the door at some point. You got to walk away from work. All right, and I know so many of you are just like me. We live and breathe, this industry. We live and breathe our schools. But you got to be able to close the door and have a personal life, And me learning and practicing to put this thing down. All right, it's 7 p.m. I'm putting my phone face down. And I'm not picking it up until the next morning, or closing the laptop. All right. You got to set those boundaries for yourself and have that personal time. That's so incredibly important. All right. So, yes. Giving employees nicknames. I know that you're trying to be cute and fun and you give everyone little cute little nicknames. That actually can turn into a giant legal issue. All right. People can get very offended by nicknames. It also can lead to favoritism, once again, right there. All right. So that's a big issue. Issuing a memo or an email to say what you expect. All right. Yes, I agree that is a mistake. All right. Now, I may issue an email or a memo as a follow-up, as a form of follow-up to clearly outline the expectation. But what we really need to do, and I think we all need to practice this more, is that we don't just tell someone what the expectation is. We need to actually get in there and show them. All right, let me show you what this expectation looks like. Let me practice this expectation with you. Instead of just putting it out there in a memo or an email. All right. So that's a good mistake that someone has made, and I hope they really learned from it right there. Here's another big one. All right. And again, I think we're all a little guilty of this one. So if you want to do your heart or your thumbs up or your smiley face, let's see how many people have made this mistake. Not recognizing teachers who consistently do their jobs well. Yeah. Can I do a heart? Can I do a thumbs up? If I'm the presenter, I'm not too familiar with that. We talk about this in a lot of leadership trainings too, that we kind of have 3 categories of employees. You have your rock stars that shine, that always exceed expectations, and they get a lot of praise and a lot of affirmation. And then over here we have the troublemakers, the ones that we're constantly having to counsel, the ones that we're constantly having to model and download, these folks over here. And then you have the ones in the middle, your wallflowers, the ones that are meeting expectations, the ones that are doing their jobs, and they tend to be the ones that go unnoticed. Because we spend a lot of time praising these, we spend a lot of time working with these folks, but we forget the ones in the middle. My recommendation to you is to make a list, of those wallflowers. Make a list of those people that constantly do their jobs and they do it well. And make sure you earmark some time every single day to give a little bit of time to those folks. All right, give a little bit of affirmation to those folks and don't let them go unnoticed. All right, so there you go. Oh, Rosie is saying, oh, I didn't know you were a TRS assessor. Good for you. Yay, we love our TRS friends. Love y'all so much. Such an advocate for that organization. All right, thinking that staff members don't know when you make a mistake. Oops, I made a mistake. Oh, I don't think anyone realized it. Trust me, they realized it, okay? So again, taking accountability, taking ownership. and being able to say, oops, I made a mistake. All right, but here's what we're going to do to move forward. All right, so there you go. Brittany was saying that she did one of those lists after one of my trainings, and it was a big eye-opener. And y'all know that when you make these lists, burn them. When you're done, burn them. Don't throw them in a trash can. Don't shred them, because people with masking tape and a lot of patience can put that back together. All right, burn these lists. All right, so that they're no longer in existence. That's for your knowledge only, right there. This one we've already talked about a little bit, but promising something that is not possible. All right, don't promise. A parent, an employee, don't promise something that's not possible. Mom, I promise you, your child will not get bit anymore. Okay? Your child will never be bit again. Don't ever say that, because they're going to get 3 bites this afternoon. I promise you. All right? Don't promise something that you can't deliver. All right? And then follow through. Not addressing employees who continue to make mistakes. There you go. Another leadership skill that people have made this mistake is thinking that you, the leader, you don't have to improve. We all need to be humble and hungry, all right? You got to be humble and hungry, and you always need to be, thirsty for new knowledge, thirsty for new skills, always wanting to grow. I know for me, we were just talking about this a couple of weeks ago too. I am a professional development junkie, all right? I love going to workshops and going and hearing new things and learning new skills. I just sometimes put too much on my plate is my problem. But thinking, oh, I got this, I don't need any new skills. Yeah, that's a mistake, all right? And just like what we talked about earlier, this ever-changing world and this ever-changing business, we gotta stay on top of things, just look how much has changed in the past year and how much is going to change. Here in Texas, we're anxiously awaiting some direction from Health and Human Services right now that's probably going to create a change, all right? So we gotta be humble and hungry and ready for that, all right? Here's a really good mistake that that someone has made that is very powerful that we can all learn from. Having a and again, I want to see your thumbs up and your hearts and your smiley faces on this one. Whoever's done this, having a difficult classroom that no one wants to handle, but you have that one teacher that will do anything you ask, so you send her in there. All right, you got that pleaser, that one teacher that just wants to be, make everyone happy and be a pleaser. And no one wants to go in that one particular classroom, so you send her. Big mistake, all right? Remember, all employee assignments must match their skills, their ability, and their training. So before you give an employee an assignment, you have to look. Do they have the skills, the ability, and the training to work in that classroom? You can't just randomly grab any warm body and throw them in a room and expect success. All right? They have to have the skills, the ability, and the training to do the job. Okay? Now, again, I know that when you're short-staffed and you're just trying to keep your head above water, it's hard. But our goal is to get your head above water so that you're not in survival mode, all right? It's amazing that when you practice everything that we've been talking about today, you're going to be above water, all right? You're not going to be in survival mode, all right? Yes, all right. So there you go on the leadership skills that I wrote down. All right. Has everything been helpful so far? Are y'all enjoying this? All right. Here is working with people. Some mistakes that we have made when working with people. All right. Taking advantage of people when they're helping you. All right, taking advantage of people. So we talked about that pleaser just a minute ago, that person that's constantly trying to please you. Sometimes we tend to take advantage of those folks. And so, yeah, that can definitely be, a mistake right there. So again, we want to be consistent with our leadership style for sure. Thinking that an upset parent is okay now. Love this one. All right. Well, she hasn't said anything since Monday, so she must be okay now. No, just because they haven't said anything else to you doesn't mean they're okay. Now they're just dwelling on it, and they're probably about to leave you. All right. Or the reason why they haven't said anything else about it is because they no longer trust you, and they're looking for their way out. So remember, a good leader is always the first to speak. All right? Whether you're dealing with an upset parent or you're dealing with a staff member, a good leader is always the first one to speak. All right? So, I was talking about this with my credentialing class yesterday. When you're walking around your building, when you're going in and out of your classrooms, doing your ratio checks, you need to be also taking temperatures. And I'm not talking about the temperatures that we've been doing at the front door. That's not what I'm talking about. But when you go into a classroom, take a temperature check, all right? How is the teacher? How are the kids, all right? Is the teacher looking a little gloomy? Or is she upbeat and perky? Are the kids, are they enjoying themselves? Are they laughing? Are they smiling? Or do the kids look frustrated and anxious, like they're about to blow at any moment? All right? That's when you need to go to that teacher and say, hey, your body is telling me that you're a little stressed today. All right? What can I do for you? How can I help you? All right? Or your face is saying, I'm tired today. All right? What can I do? How can I help you? But you always need to be the first to speak. When you see that parent come in, and they're normally chatty Cathy, and today not so much. Mom comes in with a little poopy look on her face. Hey Mom, you don't seem yourself today. What's up? What can I do for you? All right. Teresa's saying, learn to read the room. Yes, love it. All right. But those of you that are taking notes, the leader should always be the first to speak. All right. There you go. Assuming that you have enough staff to get the job done. All right. So we need to anticipate here. Also, look at the individual staffing needs. All right. Are we overworking some staff? Right now, a big trend in our industry is that we have a lot of employees that don't want to work 40 hours a week. They're perfectly fine working 20, 25 hours a week. So instead of stressing them out and burning them out, maybe I need to hire another 20-hour-a-week employee and have 2 employees for 1, all right? And then now everyone is happy. So you can't make that assumption that I'm fully staffed or I've got enough staff to get the job done. We got to look at each individual situation right there, all right? Not being able to tell which employees are causing trouble, all right? So, again, this keeps coming up as one of the mistakes. Have y'all noticed this trend? All right? Not addressing, your pot stirrers continues to come up right here. But how are you going to be able to tell which employees are causing some trouble? Well, you being present. Once again, you cannot be an effective leader from behind a desk. You got to be out there, in those classrooms, in that lobby, taking those temperature checks, getting a feel for the room. Then you can pinpoint who your pot stirrers are, all right? Or slip the cook a $50 bill. They tend to know everything, all right? Just kidding, don't do that. It was just a joke. Not really. All right. Not understanding why someone is unhappy. You've got to see the world from their point of view. All right? You got to see the world from their point of view. All right? Not running ideas past somebody else first. That's a good one. All right? Always, always, before you make a decision, always run it past someone else. All right? Hopefully, between the two of you, someone can say, that wasn't a very good decision. All right? Or we shouldn't do that. All right? There you go. Expecting your staff to take feedback, but you can't handle criticism yourself. All right, that's a good one right there. You know, you get really frustrated when they have a meltdown, but here you are doing the same thing. So we need to do some self-reflecting on that one for sure. Making an example out of an employee. Like I said earlier, discipline is based on documentation. Okay, you discipline someone for documented reasons. You terminate people for documented reasons. You promote for documented reasons. All right. So, like when I told you the story about terminating the two negative staff members, I would not have been able to do that unless I had documentation on them. It just so happened in my case that I had plenty of documentation, all right? So it's not that we made an example out of them, just doing that activity of ranking people from the most positive to the most negative made me realize I need to do something with this documentation. You know, I've got an issue here that I have not taken care of, and look what it's doing to my team. All right. It's not that you're making an example out of them. You're just opening your eyes to your documentation. Okay. Keeping your ideas to yourself. I think that's a big mistake too. You want to share your ideas so that other people can feed them. All right. You know, I'll be the first person to admit that a lot of the fantastic things that we have going on in our programs were not my ideas, all right? They were other people's ideas, staff members, teachers, directors, their ideas that, you know, we listened to their ideas and then built on them. You know, it's a really good idea. Let's talk about this some more. I want to hear more, you know? And then building on those ideas, and you create great things, all right? So, you know, don't keep those ideas to yourself. Let's run with them, all right? Thinking that you need certain equipment or certain furniture in order to be a quality program. Furniture and fancy equipment and supplies do not make you quality. It's what is right here in your heart. This is what makes you quality. It's your passion. It's your desire. All right? It's your willingness to make a difference. That's what makes you quality. Trust me, folks. I've been into a lot of programs that were fancy with all the bells and whistles and beautiful and shiny, and they were some of the worst programs I've ever seen. All right? I've also been into programs that had no money, no supplies. Everything in the building were teacher made, child made, donated, and it was some of the best programs I've ever seen. You know, I used to be a validator for a national accreditation organization, and I never will forget going to a program in Northeast Fort Worth one time, and they were going through accreditation on a grant. And when you drove up to this place again, it's very obvious there wasn't a whole lot of money here. And then you go into the program and everything was exactly what I said. It was teacher made, child made, nothing fancy in that building at all. Still to this day, I will tell you, I think it's one of the best programs I've ever been into in my life. All right. So, you know, you don't need fancy furniture and equipment and materials to be high quality. All right, high quality, it comes from the heart right there. All right, you know, but you know, the bells and whistles and the fancy stuff is nice, but it's not the only thing. All right, great. Okay, so that was a lot of mistakes. I didn't even go over half of the mistakes that I have written down right here. We might need to do a part 2 of this, but some of them just got a little repetitive right there. There you go. So again, those of you that are brand new, this is your very first time doing a Friday workshop with us. The online worksheet should be on Facebook now. So you're going to click on one of those two links to complete your worksheet. There's a $15 fee to get your 3 hours of instructor-led training. This was instructor-led today since you participated live and you have been interacting with me so well. I think we had more interaction on this workshop than any workshop we've ever done. So high five to all of you. But there you go. Now, if you're watching the recorded webinar, that's self-instructional, all right? But if you participated live, this is instructor-led. If you're going to be paying for your worksheet with a credit card, you will click on the link that says online worksheet paying with a credit card. If your school has set up an online account with me and you have been given a 5-digit account number, then you're going to click on online worksheet paying with online account number. All right. And so pretty easy to do that. Just make sure you follow the instructions, but it's super, super easy. All right. Remember, we have a teacher workshop tomorrow that I'm so excited about. It's one of my favorite topics to train on. But tomorrow we're doing the power of play. So once again, it's going to be a fun workshop, but a lot of information about the importance of play and age-appropriate play in the classroom. So if you have teachers that are available tomorrow, have them join me right here on Facebook Live at 9 o'clock, and we'll be doing the power of play. I also have director and teacher workshops scheduled for the remainder of the spring. So if you go to my website, timthetrainer.com, you can see upcoming workshops and the titles. My Tim at 10 schedule is also on my website. So take a look at the 10 o'clock 1-hour workshops that we've been doing. We have a couple of those coming up. I should have summer and fall dates scheduled in the and published in the very near future. I've got the dates down. I just need to publish the topics. I'm hoping that the world will be in a better place and that we can go back out to weekend mini conferences this fall so that I can be with you in person on Friday and Saturdays. That's what our hope is. But I'm kind of coming up with a contingency plan because a lot of you are enjoying the virtual Facebook Lives. So we'll see how those are going to look moving forward. But the spring and summer, we're definitely going to be doing it this way. All right. All right, enjoy your online worksheet. Make sure you do some good reflecting on yourself so that we can learn and be better. So there you go. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your Friday. Enjoy your weekend and continue to be healthy. Continue to make good choices. This COVID is not gone. It's nowhere close to being gone. So don't let your guard down. All right. Continue keeping everyone safe and healthy. We've got this. All right. All right. See everybody very, very soon. Take care of yourself. Bye.